What's up, guys? We're back. I'm sorry about last week. Uh, I put a whole explanation up, but just running around getting ready for getting hitched on the 22nd. So, but I won't miss another week. And I know it's late. This is a late Tuesday. I have gone through a grind of 5 straight fantasy drafts in 5 days. The last fantasy draft I just did tonight got done significantly later than I was expecting. So now I'm recording late, which is not what I try to do. Starting next week, well, first of all, we have football this week. Thursday kicks off the regular season. New England versus Kansas City in New England. And that is the start of regular season football. It's back. Fantasy football. All your drafts should be done by this point, unless you're drafting tomorrow. And I could not be more excited. So, going forward, these are going to be recorded Monday nights. Starting next week, Monday nights, probably with the Monday night game in front of me, and uploaded to be released on Tuesday morning when you wake up. No more of these late Tuesday night ones like this one will be. It will be there Tuesday morning when you wake up. You can listen to all my streaming choices, all of my waiver wire wonders, who I think is going to be start sit worthy this week. Now this is week 1, so I still have 3 points for you, and it's going to be kind of these 3 points throughout the regular season. I'm going to give you quarterback streaming options and defense streaming options every week. In case if you didn't spend a high round pick like I've been preaching on Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady or Russell Wilson, I'm going to give you some quarterbacks that are owned in 50% or less leagues. And doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to give you 3 choices for quarterback and 3 choices for defense, and all of them are owned in less than 50% of leagues. So it doesn't necessarily mean that all 3 will be there, but one of the 3 should be there for you to stream, or for you to stream at quarterback or defense. I'm going to do a waiver wire wonder, which is just people I think you should target on the waiver wire if they're there. Obviously, you just drafted, so you're probably not looking at the waiver wire. I still have a waiver wire wonder for this week. So listen to that. You don't have to take my advice, obviously. I'm not saying drop your last guy on your bench and pick these guys up, but I'm saying I would not be surprised if these guys are high waiver wire people next week. Maybe you can get in early on them if you have a spot you're willing to part with. And then I'm going to do start sit. Now, starting next week, I'll probably go through every game that's coming up and tell you who I like, who I don't like. But for this week, since the start of the regular season, and we don't really know what every team is yet, I'm just going to give you some players who I like the matchup for, and if you have those players, start them. I called the segment start sit, but I actually didn't pick any sits. So we're just going to do starts this week, and then next week we'll have the real start sit segment. Since I think you guys already know who you're starting this week. I mean, you drafted your team, so you're probably just starting, your whatever highest draft picks. You know what I mean? You're going to start your top 3 receivers that you drafted unless they have a terrible, terrible matchup. So, free tip, pay attention to your matchups. Don't play, and I mean, obviously you always play your studs. I'm trying to think who's playing Seattle this week. I don't know who Seattle opens against, but I know the Cardinals open against Detroit, so the Cardinals have a pretty good defense. I don't know how comfortable I feel playing Golden Tate and Marvin Jones against the passing defense of the Cardinals this week. If I have better options, I would probably start them over Golden Tate and Marvin Jones. Obviously, if you draft Julio Jones, you always start Julio Jones. If you draft OBJ, you always start OBJ. There's a reason you draft them so highly. But for those guys that are further down your depth chart, just pay attention to their matchups. Make sure they're not playing a fucking crazy defense. So I'm going to do streaming options today. I'm going to do waiver wire wonders, and I'm just going to do starts. Just people I like coming up in this upcoming week. And then next week we'll go right into the normal streaming options, the normal waiver wire wonders, and I'll break down game by game who you should start, who you should sit, who I like, who I don't like. But for now, we're going to do streaming options first. Let's get right into point one.
I said I'm with it if you with it. Point 'em out, point 'em out.
Alright, so we're going to do quarterback streaming options first, and then we'll do defensive streaming options second. In case you guys don't know what streaming is, I'm a big proponent of late round quarterback, and I don't think you should ever waste a really, really high draft. You should always pick your defense in one of the last 2 rounds. Like, I'm not one of those guys who's like, I'll take Seattle in the 7th round. That's dumb to me. Because you can get just as effective as a Seattle defense. Because if you draft Seattle in the 7th round, right, you have to play Seattle every week. Or else it's a wasted pick. Why would you draft Seattle's defense in the 7th round if you're not going to play Seattle every week they play? And yes, Seattle is a very good defense, so they'll probably put up pretty good numbers every week. But you can get just as good of numbers, or pretty damn close, and not waste a draft pick in the 7th round on the defense, and just stream your defense by playing matchups. So every team or quarterback I read to you guys will be 50% or less owned. I do have one defense on here that's 53% owned, but just check your league and see if they're there. If not, pick one of the other 2, because they will probably be there. But we'll start with the quarterbacks. Like I said, not a huge proponent of drafting early quarterback because you can do this streaming thing in single quarterback leagues, and you can get pretty good. You can stitch together week by week a quarterback one season if you pick the right matchup, and you can be pretty good at picking matchups. So my first quarterback is Eli Manning at Dallas. I checked, he's owned in 50% of leagues, almost exactly 50, according to ESPN. And the Dallas secondary is suspect, for sure suspect. No one really knows what it is yet, but it's not looking great. So Eli and that Giants team is filled with weapons. Their defense is really good, so they'll be getting the ball. And I'm expecting the Eli to have a good week against Dallas throwing the ball. I don't trust Eli a ton, but I like him against the Dallas defense just because of how up in the air that secondary is, especially. My number 2 quarterback streaming option, and this one's way more of a lock to me, is Carson Palmer and the Arizona Cardinals against the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions defense is not good. According to ESPN, I believe they are 30th in opponent rank for the quarterback, for wide receivers, blah, blah, blah. They're not a good defense. Carson Palmer, Arizona Cardinals, expect them to throw the ball at will against Detroit. I'm not worried about the Detroit defense at all. Carson Palmer's owned in like 20% of leagues. He's barely owned. He should be on your waiver wire if you're in a 1 quarterback league. Remember, quarterback streaming is pretty much for 1 quarterback leagues only. In a 2 quarterback league, it's almost impossible to stream that second guy because most teams have a backup quarterback selected too, so you at least have 3 quarterbacks on each team, and that really thins the pool. But in 1 quarterback leagues, there's so much quarterback depth that you can definitely stream. So if you're in a 1 quarterback league, I like Eli at Dallas. because we don't know what that Dallas secondary is, and I like Carson Palmer at Detroit because Detroit's defense is not very good. It's probably going to be a shootout. Maybe not because Arizona's defense is good. So I'm expecting the Cardinals to deal with Detroit relatively easily, and I think Carson Palmer's going to have a really good game. So Carson Palmer at Detroit, and my last quarterback streaming option bleh, is Sammy Bradford, Sammy sleeves, Sammy shoulder pads against New Orleans because we all know New Orleans is awful. That they have to score 40 points because they're going to give up 40 points. So I know Sam Bradford is not the sexiest quarterback out there, but I'm expecting him to have a very solid game against the New Orleans Saints just because that passing defense is no bueno. And Sam Bradford, very accurate quarterback, can definitely get the job done. Not worried about really anything with him playing New Orleans. And he's owned in like 11% of leagues. He should 100%, not 100% obviously, but he is most likely available in your league. So if you didn't spend a high pick on quarterback, go pick up Sam Bradford, start him week 1 against New Orleans. You'll be just fine. Trust me. For defensive streaming options, like I said, hopefully you aren't that guy who took the Seahawks defense in like the 7th round because it's stupid because you'll definitely get a good week of defense out of the Steelers, who are playing a rookie quarterback in Deshaun Kaiser in Cleveland. Now, they are 53% owned, so there's a chance they might not be available in your league. But if they are, snatch them up and start them against Cleveland. The Cleveland offense, I don't think is going to be as bad as people are saying. Like, I don't actually, to me, they're probably, the Steelers at Cleveland is probably my least favorite of these 3 picks to actually play this week. But it's not like Cleveland's going to blow you away with their offensive game. Even if they're better than expected, they're not going to be, a top 15 offense. So it's a safe pick to play Steelers at Cleveland. But out of these 3, they are the highest percentage owned and probably my least favorite to play this week. Coming in at 26% owned, and the team I really like to play this week, I've drafted them so far in every draft just because I know I'm going to play them week 1, is the LA Rams against the Colts. Now I know the Rams are a really bad team, but they have an okay defense. But it's not really what the Rams defense is. It's more that the Colts are Andrew Luck-less. There is no Andrew Luck playing this week. Scott Tolzien is not a good quarterback. The team falls apart when Andrew Luck's not there. They don't have a good offensive line. Their receivers are worthless without Andrew Luck. They can't run the ball. And the Rams have a good enough defense to really stop this terrible Colts offense without Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck is 100% confirmed not playing in the game. It is a super safe pick playing the LA Rams against the Colts. This is probably my favorite, or 1A and 1B with the other one. They are only owned in 26% of leagues, like I said, so they should definitely be available. It's a pretty good chance that they are in all your leagues. Pick them up and stream them this week as your defense, and you will definitely be okay. And the last defense is only 11% owned. So in only 11% of leagues is this defense owned, and this is probably 100% of that. 100% of that 11% are just people who like to stream, because the Bills defense has traded away most of their really good pieces, and they are playing the terrible, maybe worst offense in the league, New York Jets. Like, I think when we do these defensive streaming for the entire year, You might see the defense that plays the New York Jets on this list every week. That's how bad the Jets offense is. They have no quarterback. They have uh, an okay, I guess, running game. Okay is probably being super generous. They have no receivers. They have no tight end. I know I'm a big fan, or I have been a big fan from earlier podcasts of Austin Seferian-Jenkins, but he's not there until week 4. So the Bills are pretty much a lock as a streaming defense this week. They're only 11% owned, like I said. So go out there, pick up the Bills, or pick up the Rams, or pick up the Steelers, and play them in your defensive slot, and you'll be just as happy as the guy who spent a 7th round pick on the fucking Seahawks defense. Because he's an idiot. And that's stupid. I'm sorry, but it is. We'll go to point 2.
Point tie. Going for 2.
Alright, point 2 is a segment I'm going to be doing weekly. It is called Waiver Wire Wonders. And these are guys that performed amazingly the week before, and I think should be targeted on the waiver wire if they are available. This is probably not going to be like, you won't see David Johnson as a waiver wire wonder because he's not going to be on the waiver wire or anything like that. But these are guys who aren't owned in a ton of leagues that I think will be heavily targeted on the waiver wire after the performance they just had, and who I think you should target on your waiver wire. Or maybe it's a backup, a key backup, and the starter just got hurt last week, and you think he's going to be able to fill it. Like James Conner might show up on the waiver wire wonders because Lev Bell goes out with a hamstring injury. You should 100% go pick up James Conner if you don't have him yet. If Lev Bell goes down, it might be Samaje Perine if Fat Rob is hurt all of a sudden. I'm not saying that those guys are this week, but hypothetically, that's the kind of person that would fall into waiver wire wonders. My waiver wire wonders this week, though, I'm not basing this off of last week's performance, because last week's performance was week 4 of preseason, and probably none of these guys played. But I am basing this off of just how I think in general they will perform. So the waiver wire wonders this week. The first one is Alvin Kamara. Kamara. I think I've heard it both ways. I have always said Alvin Kamara. I think he came out and said it's actually Kamara. But fuck him. Alvin Kamara is owned in 18% of leagues. He is the 3rd running back for the Saints. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, I can't stop yawning. Ugh. He is the 3rd running back for the Saints. Now I know what you're thinking. Why would I want the 3rd running back on any team, really? Well, because the Saints throw to the running back more than any team in the league. They were first in targets to the running back, first in receptions by the running back, first in touchdown receptions by a running back. And he is their pass-catching back. Last year, Travaris Cadet had 40 receptions with the Saints, and he is gone. And who is taking Travaris Cadet's role? Alvin Kamara. And Alvin Kamara is a much, 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 much better running back than Travaris Cadet. Like 1,000,000 times better than Travaris Cadet. That being said, I'm pretty sure the Saints are playing Minnesota, like I said earlier at the Sam Bradford thing. So maybe Alvin Kamara doesn't have a great week 1. Maybe his percentage owned actually drops because people drop him. But don't be fooled. It is a matter of time before Alvin Kamara pops back up on your radar. He will be involved in the Saints offense. And if Peterson or Ingram go down, even just one of them, his usage goes up. He has more opportunities to shine. He has more passes to catch. it can only go up for Alvin Kamara. He's only owned in 18% of leagues. So odds are he's on your waiver wire. I'm not saying you have to cut someone you just drafted, the last person you just drafted, and pick up Alvin Kamara. I'm just saying keep an eye on him for upcoming waiver wire additions. The next guy on my list is a guy who I think will 100% be targeted in or on the waiver wire after this upcoming week, and that is Taylor Gabriel. He is only owned in 10% of leagues. 10%. So it is very, very, very likely that Taylor Gabriel is on your waiver wire somewhere. Taylor Gabriel is playing the not Taylor Gabriel by himself, but the Atlanta Falcons are playing the Chicago Bears in week 1 in Chicago. I don't know if you guys know this, but Atlanta has a pretty damn good offense, and Chicago's defense is not very good. Not very good at all. I know Taylor Gabriel is the third receiver, but he's a speedster, and we saw him as a home run hitter late in the year last year. He will definitely be involved, and if he has a big game against a crappy defense in Chicago, his waiver wire, his percentage owned right here is going to go up. Maybe not a ton, but it's definitely going to go up. He's only owned in 10% of leagues. 10%. So he's definitely available. And if you got a guy that you just drafted that you're not too sure of, and sometimes it happens, I drafted Tariq Cohen with my last pick, backup running back for the Bears, and I really like him. That's why I drafted him with my last pick, because I like him. I dropped him already because Ted Ginn was there, and I like Ted Ginn more. And I could have taken Ted Ginn with my last pick. For some reason, I didn't. I rectified the situation, and I took Ted Ginn with my free agent. I already picked up a free agent. So it happens sometimes. Maybe Taylor Gabriel is that guy this week. I think he'll have a good game against the Bears. The thing is, they're playing the Bears, so they might not need Taylor Gabriel. They might score, really easily with Julio Jones and Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman and not really need to throw to Taylor Gabriel. But playing such a weak defense, you have to think he'll probably perform better than if they were playing a really good defense. And he's only 10% owned. And if you have someone you drafted that maybe you don't really like, you just took him because maybe he was a value there or something like that, Taylor Gabriel is on your waiver wire, and you might be able to get in before he has a breakout game against the Bears, and all of a sudden he starts getting snatched up on waiver wires left and right. And my last guy is only owned in this is unbelievable to me because I really, really like this guy for the season. I'm not even talking about just for the upcoming matchup. I just think he's going to be super involved in that offense, and I think he has potential to be a top 10 player at his position for the entire season. And he's only owned, I can't even believe this number, because I have him on multiple teams. He's only owned in 3.9% of leagues, and that's Charles Clay. I know a lot of people don't believe in Charles Clay. A lot of people don't believe in the Buffalo Bills offense. I drafted Charles Clay with literally my last pick as my starting tight end in multiple leagues, especially in PPR. And they're playing the Jets first week. But beyond first week, I don't trust the pass catchers in Buffalo very much at all. And I've seen that offense lean on Charles Clay in the passing game. I think in the third preseason game, he had like 6-something receptions. He is going to be a key part of that offense. And it's not like he's a bum. I mean, Charles Clay had a good seasons in Miami before he came to Buffalo. And last year, he had a pretty good season towards the end of the year. they started using him a lot more, and I saw it early in the preseason. I think he's going to be heavily, 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 heavily involved. Like I said, I have him as my tight end, like my starting tight end. And if you're in a PPR league, I think he's just got such a, like, he's free pretty much in drafts. He's not being drafted. He's only owned in less than 4% of leagues. And I think, especially in a PPR league, he has the possibility of finishing as a top 10 tight end this year. That's no joke. So I know some of these other guys, I said, like, I know the other two, Alvin Kamara and Taylor Gabriel, I was like, you don't have to go pick them up right now. Obviously, you drafted your team because you drafted them. But if you reached on O.J. Howard or, I don't know, someone else as your tight end, go get Charles Clay. Because I am much higher on Charles Clay than O.J. Howard. We haven't even seen O.J. Howard yet. He barely performed in the preseason, but he's still being drafted by people because he was a big name. Fuck O.J. Howard. Charles Clay is available. Unless you happen to be in my league, I'm probably this 4%. Me and like 3 other people, probably this 4%. So unless you're in me and 3 other people's leagues, Charles Clay is 100%, well, not 100 obviously, but he's definitely available. Go pick him up. Obviously, if you got Gronk, you don't need to pick up Charles Clay. If you got, Jimmy Graham or Tyler Eifert or Travis Kelce, you don't need to pick up Charles Clay. If you got Delaney Walker, I'm not saying you need to pick up Charles Clay. I'm saying there's a chance Charles Clay, at the end of the year, there's a chance, if he stays healthy, that Charles Clay at the end of the year, especially in PPR, might be a better tight end than Delaney Walker. That might be a flaming hot take, and I don't care, because I believe it. Like I said, I drafted Charles Clay as my tight end. I obviously have some kind of confidence that he will perform, or else I would have drafted someone else. But I waited until the last round before kicker defense, and I said Charles Clay is my tight end. So, and that's in multiple leagues, not just in one. That's in multiple leagues. So I am super high on Charles Clay. He is definitely a waiver wire wonder. 4% of leagues. 3.9. I could not believe that number when I saw it. 3.9% of leagues. Go get Charles Clay. Please go get Charles Clay. Alright, on to point 3.
Puts up the 3. Bang!
Alright, so we are going to get into start sit. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I don't actually have any sits. This is all starts. Why do I want to rain negativity down on your first week of fantasy football? Telling you should sit these people that you drafted. That's probably the good advice. But we'll start that next week. For now, you'll just get the happy advice. So these are all starts. These aren't sits. This has a ton to do with matchups, obviously. I will play. So we'll start with the first start sit I have is play all of your Steelers. If you own a Steeler, play the Steeler. You have the Steelers taking on Cleveland. Cleveland's defense, not very good. It's pretty self-explanatory. Play Big Ben. Play Lev Bell. 100% play Lev Bell. You should always play Lev Bell. It's not really amazing advice because you should be doing it anyway. But Lev Bell has potential to just have a complete not even potential. It's almost guaranteed that Lev Bell just has a monster game unless he gets hurt or something catastrophic happens. Lev Bell is a lock for a monster game. But play Martavis Bryant, play Antonio Brown, play Ben Roethlisberger, maybe even sneaky play Vance McDonald. A little bit of news in case you were unaware. The Steelers traded, I think it was like a 4th round pick to San Francisco for Vance McDonald, and they did it because, and this is a quote from Mike Tomlin, that his tight ends on his team were 2 JV. So, or not varsity enough or something like that. That was the gist of the quote. So, if Vance McDonald is playing this week, he might be like a kind of sneaky start at tight end. Odds are you probably have a tight end that you drafted already on your roster, so you're not going to go pick up Vance McDonald, who's almost 100% on the waiver wire. But if you do happen, you are that one guy who drafted Vance McDonald, you should play him this week. If I think he's going to play, so play him because they're playing the Browns, and the Browns aren't very good. But yeah, play your Steelers. I wrote down specifically Martavis, but play all your Steelers. My second on the list for start of the start sit, since there's no sit, is play the running backs from Carolina against San Francisco. San Francisco had the worst run defense in the league last year. I don't care how many pieces they added. It couldn't have gotten that much better in one offseason. So, I'm going to say play the running backs from Carolina and Cam Newton. Cam Newton likes to run. I know he was bad last year, but I really like him against Carolina. If he wasn't owned in so many leagues, I would have made him a streaming option, but he's owned in way too many leagues for that. So I'm going to say there's no way San Francisco slows down this rushing attack between McCaffrey and Jonathan Stewart and Cam Newton. So play all three of them if you have them on your roster. 100% play the running backs from Carolina and Cam Newton. And my last one is another just, hey, play this team against Detroit. And I already talked about it in my quarterback streaming options where I have Carson Palmer as a streaming candidate. You should play all the Cardinals against Detroit. Detroit does have some pretty good corners. Darius Slay is there, is a pretty good corner. I don't know who the other corner is. Nevin Lawson, maybe? But their defense is not very good. So maybe don't play all your Cardinals if you have like John Brown or Jaron Brown. Maybe you probably have someone else that you'd like to play over them. If not, I mean, I'm not really that hesitant on playing John Brown, but odds are John Brown is not a have-to-play guy on your roster today this week. There's no buys or anything. Everyone's playing, so I can't imagine that John Brown is like a starting guy on your roster. He's been drafted. He's being drafted too late for that. But Larry Fitz, that's a great start. David Johnson should always be started, and like I said, Carson Palmer is one of my streaming candidates of the week. So play your Cardinals. Maybe not John Brown or Jaron Brown. I would still be fine playing them, but definitely play Fitz. Definitely play David Johnson. Definitely play Carson Palmer. And that's it for point 3. That's all I wrote down for start sit. Like I said, kind of a quicker start sit today, just because I'm getting this show out late, and there's not really a last week to. The first week of fantasy is kind of hard because you don't know what everyone is yet. You haven't seen, you have general ideas based on some tape, but there's so many rookies, like Jonathan Stewart and Christian McCaffrey are one of my start sits, but we don't really know what Christian McCaffrey is. We have a general idea based on what we've seen in the preseason and what we've seen from his rookie tape, but we don't know. Like I said, play them against San Francisco because San Francisco's run defense was really bad last year, and there's no way they fixed it. But what if they did? By some miraculous, some stud breaks out. We have no idea what's on San Francisco yet. So we're playing matchups against these defenses that we don't know what the defense looks like yet. Like my quarterback streaming option was Eli at Dallas, and I still feel strongly about that, but That's based on the fact that Dallas has a weak secondary, but we don't know that Dallas has a weak secondary. We're just basing it on the fact of whose names on a roster right now. That's it. It's just names on a roster. These names don't look as good as these names, so we think this team is better. Do I still feel confident in all of my picks? Yes. Because if I'm not confident in all of my picks, why would you be? But I'm just saying the first week of the fantasy season is the easiest week to be wrong about because we just don't know. We're just taking educated guesses here. Week 8, or we can actually look at, hey, San Francisco has given up the most yards in the league on the ground, and it's not even close. Then we know when we have a running back going against San Francisco, it's pretty much a lock that he's going to do all right. But right now, first week, just a guess. So from here on out, start sit, I'm going to break down game by game who I like in that game, who I don't like in that game, who you should play, who you shouldn't play. We're going to do quarterback and defensive streaming every week. I'm going to give you 3 quarterbacks and 3 defenses that are less than 50% owned and tell you why I think you should stream them. And then we're going to do waiver wire wonders. And that's pretty much going to be like what the 3 points will be, because I feel like that's the most effective way to help you perform well with a 1 day a week show. That's the most effective amount of information to give you to help you perform in your fantasy league and try and win a championship. Streaming options, who you should target on the waiver wire, and going game by game, reviewing what I think will happen in the game, and telling you who I think you should play and who you should sit. In a 1 day a week show, I think that is the most effective way. So we're not going to get as much variety in our points and the kind of points I'm giving you every week. We're going to kind of stick to this format, as these are the 3 points for the regular season, but I think it's the most helpful way to do it going forward. But that's it. Quick plug, the B.S. Nerds Draft Best Ball League is live right now as you're listening to this. The link is on the B.S. Nerds Facebook page. Just click the link, join the league if you're interested. We will be giving away a hat to the winner, a B.S. Nerds hat. It's completely free. You just have to download the Draft Daily Fantasy app and click the link. If you click the link after you download the app, everything will be easy to follow from that point on. Join the league. The draft is set for tomorrow, Wednesday, September 6th at 8 p.m. We will be drafting, so join the league. Quick. And try and win that hat. And listen to the BS Nerd Show. That'll be coming out later this week. And check out WECP on Sunday or Dave Speaks on Sunday, whichever Sunday is coming up next. They alternate every 2 weeks. 1 week is WECP, the next week is Dave Speaks, the next week is WECP, the next week after that is Dave Speaks. So just whichever one is up this week, I think it's WECP. Go listen to that. Dave just dropped a Dave Speaks, so yes, it's 100% WECP this week. Go listen to Dave Speaks, hashtag Dave Speaks he just dropped, and keep an eye out for the next WECP coming on Sunday, and the Boston Sports Nerds podcast, the main podcast, coming out later this week. But thanks for listening, guys. Join the draft, the BS Nerds draft, and have a good opening week of football season. May all your fantasy glory, may your team perform exactly how you expected it to, and you win your matchups. Hopefully you guys are all very successful and you listened to me and didn't draft Aaron Rodgers. second round. Bye.